Hello, everyone. Welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izso, and oh, man, do we have another great show for you. The book, Overhaul Your Career, 7 tips for restoring your classic model for new roads. If you are a person who is in the last half, last third, last quarter of your career, this book is indispensable. I've never used the word indispensable when it comes to books, but this one is indispensable. The single best book on your transition as you go into the later stages of your career and you think about transitioning. I don't believe in retirement. There is really no such thing as that, because I don't know what you're retiring from, honestly. As my author and friend, Chris Fontanella, points out in this book, the fact of the matter is retirement does not mean inactivity. In fact, when you go into inactivity, you're done. Sorry, you're done. Inactivity, done. So you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm in that later stages of my career and, I'm not working and I don't know if I want to work. He's got answers. You're a classic model, man. You're your classic car. You've been around for a long time. You've been on the road. The roads have changed. Technology has changed. And you've got to get the car up to date to deal with the new roads that exist. And that's what my friend Chris has done here with Overhaul Your Career. Fabulous. So let me just get into Chris right now, because Chris has been on the show before. You've seen him before. He's absolutely fabulous, and I've enjoyed being with him. He is the founder of Encore Professionals Group, a professional services firm specializing in the identification and placement of accounting and financial professionals in temporary and permanent roles within many recognizable corporations in the greater LA area. And I'm not talking about lower Alabama. I am talking about Los Angeles. He previously served as division director for Robert Half International and client service director for Resources Global Professionals. Prior to his employment in the staffing and consulting industry, he spent years studying and preparing for the ministry, and in fact was a minister for a while, having attended ORU, otherwise known as Oral Roberts University, and Fuller Theological Seminary, where he earned his master's. And he is a fabulous author, great friend to me and the show, and I always love having him on. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, and welcome back, my friend, Chris Fontanella. Welcome back to A New Direction, brother.
Thank you, Jay. It's so good to be on the show again. I love hanging out with you for a while.
Yeah, it's never long enough, is it? I always feel like we do the show, we go, what, it's over?
Yeah, I know. It's like we plow through the hours so quickly, and there's still like a lot of untouched material.
There always is. There always is. And by the way, folks, I just want to tell you something. This is a 100-page book. And yet it is chock full. And I mean, it is so full of information that, you can read it in a couple hours, but you're going to want to reread it and reread it and reread it again. It's just so full of great stuff. I wanted to say something in your introduction that you wrote here. You say vintage vehicles require repairs, new parts, and perhaps even a fresh coat of paint. The older the ride, the more miles traveled, the more wear and tear you can expect. The road takes its toll. There's no shame in admitting it. If you've been employed in the employment journey for 40 years or more, chances are your career vehicle is overdue for repair, renovation, and renewal.
Yep.
And so this is the goal of the book, is to help people repair. Talk about the mindset of we've been in the working world and where we're going to be headed in Overhaul Your Career.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've been experiencing this, Jay, but I actually, writing the book was interesting for me because I sort of am living what I wrote about. I'm definitely in the final third of my career.
Mm-hmm.
Encore is my second business that I started. I've been in the staffing consulting world for about 33 years now. And frankly, I've just hit a point where I'm sort of ready for a change. I'm ready for something different. It's not that I don't like what I'm doing. I realize that there's more career road behind me than ahead of me. And now I'm trying to figure out, like, what do I do with the time that's remaining and the road that I have left to travel? And I think, a lot of people in our age group are struggling with those sort of issues. And so, as you know, I did the other two books. One, the Jumpstart Your Career, was geared toward you're coming out of college or Votech school. You're trying to figure out, hey, how do I go about building a career? Then Tune Up Your Career is like, now you're in the middle of it and you're dealing with corporate BS and all the other stuff that comes with climbing the corporate ladder. And, what can you do to tune up your car to keep it cruising down the road? And it just made sense to sort of cap things off with Overhaul Your Career, which is geared toward that last phase and crossing that threshold. And how can you have like a renewed sense of purpose with what you're doing with your time at work, however you want to define that. So that's sort of the gist of the book right there.
Let's go to chapter 1, because I think this is what sets off everything for me, Chris, because the title's called, let's call it a day, Retire the Idea of Retirement.
Yeah.
And you have a quote here from Joanne Jenkins, who is CEO of AARP. And she wrote an article, I think it was called Work Reimagined, Uncover Calling. And she said this: we need to get to the point where we are no longer defined by the old expectations of what we should do or should not do at a certain age. And that means we need to reimagine our lives so we can be open to joy and fulfillment throughout our days. After all, it is not really about aging. It is about living. And you made a comment right after that says, slowing down is just fine. Just don't stop. Right. Talk us through where we're at in redefining retirement.
Yeah, so you just don't want your feet to go to sleep. You got to keep moving. The great thing is you get to define that however you want to define it. I've been fortunate. I've had some success in the businesses that I've been a part of, and for me, so I'm looking for something different to keep moving down the road that gives me a renewed sense of meaningfulness and purposefulness. And honestly, I've yet to figure that out for myself, like that next thing. But the great thing is like there's nothing keeping me from exploring any avenue, any road, any pathway. And I get to sort of steer the vehicle in whatever direction I want to go. I think there's another line in that chapter where I basically say, you don't want to get to the point where you're grazing on the grass of inactivity, where you're just sitting around, you're doing nothing, you're chewing the cud over and over of like nothingness, which is only going to lead to meaninglessness, right? And that lack of purpose. And, by staying active and maintaining an active life, again, however you want to define that, that's what's going to keep you moving down the road. And that's what's really important. Otherwise, you're just going to, from a career standpoint or even a life standpoint, you just start to atrophy.
You make a quote by Peter Buckman, who all of a sudden I went blank on what he wrote. But he says retirement is a nonsensical term. Can you dig into that just a little bit?
Yeah, I just, that whole chapter is really about retiring the idea of retirement. I guess the traditional sense of that just kind of means like, hey, I'm done with the working world and now I'm just gonna, do whatever I want. But the reality is a lot of people, they don't really do anything with that time, and you've got to figure out how to fill that space and what you're going to do with it. And I think he's right. It's just it's a nonsensical term because you're waking, and he even says, and your sleeping hours are filled with a lot of worries and different things going on in your life. So, it makes more sense to figure out, what you're going to do with that time you've been allocated every day, even though you may not be going to an office and checking into an office and punching a time card anymore. Again, you get to define that time and how you want to use it. The important thing is figuring out what you want to do with the time and then doing it.
Yeah. I think there's something at the end of this chapter that you say that's just really, really important here. Getting older does not mean you're destined to live a bored and tired existence for the rest of your days. Being older doesn't mean you have to call it quits. Don't you think we see a lot of that? I don't know that it's intentional, But I think people just kind of go, I'm retired, I'm calling it quits.
Yeah.
And I want people, I guess the message is don't quit, right? Whatever we're doing, don't quit. I mean, we're going to talk, more and more about what to do, but quitting is such a big word here in the book, I think.
Yeah, I think I quoted the artist Pink, and she says, I want to ride till the wheels fall off.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's the opposite of quitting, right? Like, she's had tremendous success as an artist, but she's already sort of like, even at a younger age, like in her mid 40s now, like segueing into other things. Like she's a vintner, and she's exploring other avenues. She's got a residency in Vegas, which, she could probably ride that out for a while, like a lot of musicians and artists do. But the point is she's thinking about other thresholds she wants to cross and other things she wants to delve into. Again, and I'll just, not to sound like a broken record, but that's the great thing about the various stages your career goes through. If you take personal responsibility for where you're driving your career vehicle, there's always a place for you to go, and you get to define that. And I just think that that's great. It's very liberating. It's not to say there aren't challenges. Like I got a lot of stuff going through my mind that, I'm almost 60 now. Right. And I deal with a lot of stuff that people my age are probably dealing with about how much they can contribute to a company, society, the world. And, I've got a lot of self-doubts about jumping into something new, and do I have the capacity to learn, and all these things. I mean, they just sort of bombard you sometimes, and it can be liberating if you just step back for a second, think, despite all of that, I still have the power to make some decisions here and take my vehicle where I want to take it.
Yeah. Which is so important that it comes out through this book, and what you're saying now is that you have more power than you think you have.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think what happens is we'll talk about this later, but there is a mindset that happens as you age that you have to fight.
Yes.
That says, I don't know that I have any useful purpose. I don't know that I can contribute. I'm too old. I can't teach. I'm an old dog. I can't learn new tricks. I think there's a whole bunch of mindsets. We'll talk about these as we go on, but there's these, you call them advertisements. There's these advertisements that run in our head.
Yeah. That
put us in a position where we go, I don't know if I can. Instead of, and you talk about this later, I can't remember if it's chapter 5 or 6, about, we don't take time to dream and fantasize about, well, what could I do?
Right. That's right.
What are the possibilities?
I really try to emphasize the importance of stepping back and letting your mind wander, wonder, and wish. Right. Like I put that phrase in there because we're so accustomed to being on our work treadmill. You wake up in the morning, you eat, you go to work, you put in your 8, 10, 12 hour, 14-hour day, come home, you lather, rinse, repeat, you do the whole thing all over again every day. And nobody's taking the time to just incorporate a good 15 minutes of solitude and quietness and reflection and contemplation in their day, to where their mind can wonder about what's next for me. What else can I do? What else would I like to do? What's on my wish list that if I really wanted to go for it and money wasn't a concern, or, whatever, there's 100 things on that sort of list, but, what would I want to do? And people are just so busy. And, and I talk about, the influences of technology, good and bad. But one of the bad sides is, like, even when people get home from work, they're still checking stuff about work on their phone, or they're logging in once they get home on their computer at home. Like, so they're never detached, which prevents them from having time to just sit around, do nothing, and just let thoughts come to you and just reflect and contemplate.
It's so true. Chapter 2. Okay, by the way, let me just say, whenever you use any Star Trek reference, Uh, even if it's the next generation, which is my second favorite Star Trek, because the original Star Trek is my favorite. Um, and the title of the chapter, ladies and gentlemen, is called "Resistance is Not Futile. Reclaim Your Inner Rebel." You say this: nonconformity, the conscious choice to take alternative approaches to the mainstream, is a necessary trait if you hope to conclude. If you hope to have a career on a high note to conclude in your concluding hours. And you say a fighting spirit exactly is what must be recovered. Talk about the idea of, okay, we've got to have this rebel spirit.
Yeah.
That is so necessary in this stage where we're at in the last half, last third, last quarter of our working career.
Yeah. I mean, remember, like you've been cruising down the roads of corporate America for years now, right? And I'm sure you've been drubbed and beaten down by all the stuff that goes with that. If you've ever spent any time in corporate life, or even if it's just, you work for a family-run business and all the little mini politics that can happen in an organization like that, work over the years can really start to pound on you and beat you up. And I think what's necessary to overcome that is what I call reclaiming your inner rebel, like digging down deep and finding that person that just loved to revolt against their parents just because they wanted to back in the day. Now, hopefully you're more mature and you're approaching that sort of attitude with the right mindset and doing it properly. But you got to find that inner resistor that says, I'm going to reject these negative employment myths that say, for example, just because you're older doesn't mean you can't contribute anymore. And that is a myth out there. Ageism is a real thing. I've been talking to people who are still looking for jobs and they're at the tail end of their career. They're 60 to 65, some are 67. And they're like, Chris, I get into these interviews and I can tell by the questions they ask me, they're basically saying, why would somebody your age want to do this job, which is maybe something you did 10 years ago? And I tell them, I just want to stay active. I want to stay busy. I want to stay engaged. And maybe I can mentor some of your younger staff, but they don't want to hire me just because I'm older. That's hard to fight. I mean, that's hard to overcome, but you got to keep fighting that. And you got to keep, especially in your own mind, right? Because eventually you start to think, man, this, I'm not overcoming this. And you start to get those negative thoughts that come in, and what are you going to do about that? So you got to keep fighting.
Yeah. And J. Paul Getty, in his book, The Art of Individuality, which you quote here, says, few, if any, people who insist on squeezing themselves into stereotypical molds will ever get very far on the road to success, or in their careers. And, you talk about that there's a plethora of people who are risk adverse, who are willing to just go with the status quo. They're never going to fight it. They're just going to go down the road. This rebellious spirit, and not for the sake of being rebellious,
right,
but this rebellious talent, if you will, of saying, no, I've got something to contribute. And let's just take your example. Somebody were to ask me that question that was asked, why would you at somebody your age do this? I have to be honest with you. The first thought that came to my mind is, I have a wealth of knowledge and experience,
right,
that none of your people, including you, have.
Right.
That still is relevant in the market today.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to help people see that right. There's a pretty darn good reason for you to still have a seat at the table.
Yes.
And you have to impose that on people and get them to see that. And it's up to, like all of my books emphasize that the foundation of any noteworthy career is taking personal responsibility for it. And this is just another area where you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to, in as diplomatic and professionally bold as you possibly can, impose that view on to whoever you're talking to, that you you still deserve a seat at the table, and help them to see that. I'm really big, even if you're a shy person, right? And there's always going to be the people that are just going to follow, they're going to be the masses that just do whatever to get their check and go home. But we're talking about the people that want to sort of break out and, develop a noteworthy career and build a noteworthy career. You have to find a way to tap into your own individuality and realize that, the stars shine brightest against a dark background, and the workforce can be a dark background. Let's layer in AI, right? Like a lot of jobs are going to go away. So how in all of this advancements of technology are you going to start carving something out where you can shine as an individual and contribute and go to work every day and have a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose? And that's all on you to figure out. Now, I'm not saying it's easy. I think it's actually getting more complicated and more difficult than ever before, which I'm sure 10 years down the road, somebody will say the same thing. But the responsibility to sort all that stuff out and sift through it and wade through the mud, that's on you, and then just try to figure out how to get to some stable, solid ground.
You know how you can be a rebel right now, ladies and gentlemen? Check out this book, Overhaul Your Career, 7 Tips for Restoring Your Classic Model for New Roads. I'm with Chris Fontanella. You're listening to him here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, let me talk to you about Zoundy. You may not have heard of it. It's a new audio place that you can listen to books, but it's fabulous for authors. Here's the deal. I am speaking at a conference in July in Utah, and to several hundred people. They set me up a code that I can give my audiobook away to every one of them. And when they download it, I get back their email address, and I can talk to them directly about what they liked, didn't like what they want to see me write, what they wish I would have added. And it's a fabulous, fabulous platform. So listen, whether you're a listener or whether you are especially an author in the audio space, check out Zoundy.com, Zoundy.com. But here's the deal. Special offer right here, New Direction with me, Jay, Coach Jay. You just need to go to Zoundy.com/Jay, Jay. And then when you look to sign up, use the promo code J25. That's JAY25. Get yourself into Zoundy. I'm telling you, authors, publishers, best thing that you can ever do for your authors and your books. I'm just promising you. Linda Craft Team Realtors, 40 years now in the business. Listen, they are, I've said a lot about them, but the fact of the matter is they are literally the transition experts. Every place you've ever lived has been a life transition, and they know how to take the stress out of it. They've been doing it for 40 years successfully, thousands of people everywhere. Listen, just look them up. I don't care where you live. They know they're independently owned and operated. They're not affiliated with any national company. You're ready to sell your home. You're ready to buy your home. They're on top of it. Just check them out, lindacraft.com, LINDACRAFT.com. Back here on A New Direction with my friend Chris Fontanella, Overhaul Your Career, 7 Tips for Restoring Your Classic Model for New Roads is the book. Absolutely fabulous book. Just love it, every minute of it. I want to talk about, before we get out of chapter 2, just some of the things that you talk about. There's 3 ways to rebel. One is mindfully, and I had to change the words because we're on radio across the country, so there's certain words I can't use.
Yes.
So mindfully, and what you say is embrace a not giving a crap mindset.
Yeah.
That was the only safe way I could do that. But let's talk briefly, mindfully embracing a not give a crap mindset. What do you mean by that in terms of having this way to rebel?
Yeah, it's just about being intentional in how you're going about rebelling. Your reference to the not giving a crap really comes from a book by Mark Manson, where he basically talks about prioritizing what you should really care about and what you shouldn't care about and not give a crap about. Mm-hmm. And then, focusing on the things that really matter. And then that's it. And everything else you could just let fall by the wayside. So it's being mindful about what you're putting your attention on and how you're going about saying no to some things and taking a stand against that, and then saying yes to some other stuff.
Next way you talk about is respectfully. Defy, but maintain deference.
Yeah, that's a good. People don't use the word deference anymore. Like, I have some older friends in their 70s, and my dad's turning 9. Like, I show deference to those people just because they're older than me. And when you rebel, you may feel in your heart of hearts that you're right and the other person's absolutely wrong. That doesn't mean you have to bulldoze them over. You don't have to steamroll over them. You could defy them, but you can do it with dignity and you can do it with respect. And I think that's important to remember when you're rebelling, because you don't want to just stomp all over everybody to make your point and to get where you want to go. You can still do it in a professional way and still be bold and still be rebellious.
Wholeheartedly, and you say commit fully.
Yeah. There's no half-stepping with rebellions. You can imagine where we'd be as a country if we only, took half measures on trying to create our independence. We wouldn't be here. So, like, you have to be bold. You have to be fully committed. You have to jump in with both feet. Like, you can't half step here. And otherwise you're just, because you're going to meet resistance. And I think I talk about some people like Jesus and Gandhi and others, like, they all met resistance for what they felt compelled to do and the direction they felt to take. And you could be assured that if you're going to resist employment myths and try to take a stand to prove your value and your worth and that you still have something to contribute, you're going to meet some people along the way that don't agree with you and are going to resist you. So, you have to be fully committed or you're not going to break through those barriers.
You also, in this part, you talk about what to rebel against. And I think these 4 areas are really great. So I'm going to list them out to you, and I want you to kind of jump in and expand on them. Here's what to rebel against. One of them is the old way of doing things.
Yeah. The old playbook for, the old timer doesn't really work anymore. What got you where you're at was important. And that was a great playbook for that period of time. But I think, in your latter stage of your career, you're going to have to create a new playbook for this day and age and this time of your life and this stage of your career. Mm-hmm. So, maybe there's some things in the old way you did things that can carry over, but in general, I think you should reassess all of that stuff and create a new playbook for yourself.
I love that. Here's the second one: the tendency to waste time.
Yeah. I don't think we think about time enough. We have more of it than we know what to do with, but we waste more of it than we should. And honestly, this is probably one of my greatest sins. I waste too much time, dilly-dallying, not waking up with a plan to figure stuff out that I want to do today. There's good wasting time. Like for me, going in my backyard and gardening, that's good time for me to what I call waste, because I'm beautifying my backyard and I love it. And it's mental health stuff for me. But there's the other kind that's just a killer, where you're just sitting around and you're doing nothing. Maybe you're, scrolling through Instagram or Facebook. And so, having a plan and a purpose with what you do with your time every day is critical.
Are you saying that the 2.5 hours of the black hole of YouTube is maybe a waste of time?
Oh my God. I'm sure your listeners, and you probably know people who go down those wormholes and they're researching things that you're like, really? I just can't imagine that you would spend that much time on that.
Bro, I am neither going to confirm or deny. I may have done that before. So I'm not going to do either one.
It's easy to do.
It's so easy. Here's something else you talk about, what to rebel against: the misconception that old dogs can't learn new tricks.
Yeah. Yeah. The saying that old dogs can't learn new tricks is snappy, but it's not really true. And I think I quote from some veterinarians who basically say, actually, older dogs are easier to train because they're not bouncing off the walls like the puppies anymore,
Right.
and they can sit still and they can learn, they can, they could take in material and take in ideas and follow advice and such a lot easier and a lot better. It's just you have to have the aptitude to want to do it, right? That's where I think we get tripped up the older we get. It's easy to sort of get a little lazy, like I don't want to work that hard anymore. I've been working my fanny off for all these years. I'm tired. And somehow you got to figure out a way to snap yourself out of that and say, no, I still have the capacity to absorb information and to learn. And even with as advancements in technology are going at a warp speed, we can still keep up. You just have to have the desire and the willingness to put yourself out there.
I'm going to add to this a little bit, because I think as we age, we stop being curious, and or at least we slow down our curiosity. And I think learning comes from continually and reducing our aging or slowing it down is maintaining our curiosity.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say about doing this show, and I don't think my wife will ever let me quit it, because for 8 years, and we've been doing this show for 8 years now, I read a book a week. And that curiosity of learning is so inspiring. I mean, reading this book, Overhaul Your Career, I have to tell you, I know that I'm in the last third here of my career. I know I am. But you know what? My mind is still so curious.
That's great.
I still want to learn as much as I can, because the more I learn, the less I realize I know.
Yeah.
Because I read this book this week, right? Not a hard read, quick read. But here's the problem. Do you know how many books were published this week?
Right. Yeah.
Thousands.
Yeah, which is why not enough people are buying mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, quit writing, everybody. Just can you let the people buy my books first?
I've never had anybody say that on the show. Oh, that's so good. There's tens of thousands of books being published.
Right.
I mean, I read one.
Yeah, I know. And if you notice, like, I can't remember exactly how many, but I think I quoted out of at least 40 or 50 different books in this book.
Yeah.
So I read all of those books because I was gathering information as I was,
Right.
stewing on the topic. And it was great. I mean, I immersed myself in it. And then I needed a period to come out of it and process and just give my mind a break. But I think what you're doing is fantastic, because it keeps you sharp. And what's I mean, a lot of times I have to look up a lot of words. Like I don't, I'm reading a book and I'm like, I don't know what that word is. And then you're learning, vocabulary, like you're learning topics and information. It's great. Like, so you just got to throw yourself in there.
Yeah. I'm working on a new language, foreign language right now.
Nice.
And, I'm working on Hebrew. And I have to tell you, it's such a mind-opening experience. Every time I've worked on a new language and reading a book, folks, do yourself a favor. No matter how old you get, you can always be learning. That's the point.
Yeah.
Here's the fourth one that you have here. Thinking in terms of better or worse, right? No single time or phase in our career is better than the other.
Yeah. It's probably hard to accept that the older you get. We probably daydream about our glory days when we were younger and stronger, more fit or whatever. I have points in my career earlier on, like, starting my first business with my business partner, and it went really well. And there was a lot of excitement about that. But that doesn't mean whatever I'm doing in the latter stage is less good, right? Is not as good as that. It's all about just creating some newer stuff at this stage. It's not about better or worse. They're just segments in time and episodes of time and different events at different phases. But at the end of the day, all of it gets cobbled together in building your overall career and being on a lifelong career journey. And nothing gets lost. It sort of all gets carried along the way. And what I've found too, and when I look back, is there's seems to be these invisible threads that sort of weave through all the events from earlier on into where I'm at today. It sort of takes training your eye to kind of see some of like, oh, like that kind of led me here. And then this happened. And, this company got acquired. And so then I was out of a job. And like, you start putting it all together and you're like, oh, looking back, this is a pretty nice looking tapestry.
Yeah.
And it's not that one string of yarn is any better than the other. It's sort of all together. It makes this beautiful, thing to look at.
Chapter 3, entitled An Appreciation of Variation, Remember and Reprise. And of course, you borrowed a musical term here, but really the big theme here seems to be our idea of knowing ourselves and individuality.
Yeah.
In fact, you said reclaiming your inner revolutionary spirit is difficult if you have no sense of self. It necessitates knowing yourself and what you believe is worth fighting for. So it bears repeating and reminding, be true to yourself, because the best careers are had by those who explore employment channels that allow their individuality to shine.
Yeah.
And of course, you have the Oscar Wilde quote, be yourself because everyone else is taken, which is so true. Let's talk about this in terms of a career and the individuality. How do we make that fit?
Fit in what sense? Fit in.
I mean, like, I know we're supposed to be rebels, but how do we be true to ourselves and yet we're wanting to work, and yet we because I think of it this way, Chris. I think of it as, I have a set of core values. And I know what my core values are.
Yeah.
And I want to be true to my core values.
Yeah.
And yet, there's people out there who go, I know what my core values are, but it's really hard for me to maybe find a job that aligns with those core values. Yeah. Where do I stand in that light? Do I just take a job, or do I really stand firm on that?
Yeah. It's probably a little of everything, right? Like, because you don't want to be, I've got to be me, and I've got to be true to myself, and then you never take a job,
right?
And then you're broke, and you're relying on your parents, and whatever. But it's also it's really important to just remember who you are at your core, right? Mm-hmm. And to whatever extent possible, to try to explore avenues that allow you to give voice to that individuality within your job. That allow you to, let your individuality shine. Now, there may be times where, the opportunity just hasn't met you yet. And so you got to take something in the interim to just sort of bide your time. I always encourage people to, while you're biding your time, you're taking something that you're not thrilled about. It's not, it's not the right fit for you, mm-hmm. But you could be, as you're doing that, still looking for that thing that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. You can be edging toward that thing. There's always opportunities, mm-hmm. When you're in a situation they just sort of spring up sometimes, but for you to pivot. And then all of a sudden that just edges you a little closer to where you really want to be. These things don't always happen just overnight. And few of us get lucky enough to where it unfolds before us and we step right into it. Or the people who know, like my daughter, who always wanted to be in music in one way or another, and committed herself to that. And now that's what she does, and she's happy. Or, other people who knew from an early age, this is what and that's all they've been doing. But most of us kind of happenstance into whatever we're doing that really makes us happy.
Well, I think there's, the one thing in this chapter that I think is so prevalent, the reprisal, right? That there's reinvention and reprisal, meaning that you can maintain your individuality and you can maintain who you are, but you can reinvent who you are.
Yeah.
at the same time without completely losing yourself.
Right.
And I think there's this thing you say many travelers on their career journey forget who they are as that person deep down at the core of their being. Somewhere along the way, they lose themselves, and losing yourself, whether in your career or life, is the worst possible thing that can happen.
Yeah.
So this idea of reprising who I am without losing who I am,
Right.
reinventing myself without losing who I am.
Right.
Can
Yeah,
be-
it's really important, right? Like it's because you can still be true to who you are at your core, but you can, from a vocational standpoint, excuse me, you can sort of branch off. It doesn't, being true to yourself doesn't mean that you're bound to this one type of position, because reprising it means you could sort of splinter off, maybe ever so slightly, maybe a little more broadly, but you're allowed to sort of branch off a bit into something that's still connected to what you've been doing. And then I make the point, there are occasions though where, a reprisal off of the overarching theme of your career isn't enough, because you've come to the determination that it's time to blow the whole thing up. And you need a total reimagination, a total reinvention of what you want to do with the remaining career road you have ahead of you. And like for me, I've been in the staffing world for 33 years. I'm really ready for something completely different. I don't know if I'm going to find it. Yeah, I've been thinking about this for probably 2 years. I'm still doing the staffing stuff. But I think I am a candidate for that, totally blowing the whole thing up and doing something totally different. I just haven't figured it out yet, and I'm grinding through it and struggling through it.
Yeah.
And that's really important, like for your listeners to hear too. Like, it's okay to be, like I've been telling people, I'm trying to get comfortable with my lostness. I feel really lost right now in my career, like as far as finding that next threshold to cross into a new, renewed sense of purpose. Right. I haven't found it yet, and I'm going on about 2 years. And so when people ask me, well, what do you want? I'm like, honestly, I haven't figured it out yet. I'm looking, I'm thinking, I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm hoping I find it sooner than later.
I can help you, Chris. Coach Jay here.
I know you want me to do podcasts or something,
right? You're listening to my friend Chris Fontanella. His book, outstanding, Overhaul Your Career, 7 Tips for Restoring Your Classic Model for New Roads. Absolutely fabulous. I really have enjoyed it. You're listening to him here on a new direction. Hey, folks, I talk about Zoundy a lot. Zoundy, ZOUNDY.com. Fabulous for authors, publishers, as well as listeners. I got to be honest, the sound quality is fantastic. But here's the great thing: if you're an author, publisher, I have audiobooks. I've got my books on Zoundy. And here's the thing: I speak at conferences, but I even have for just the general public. Like I have a code specifically for people on Facebook that occasionally I put out, and my Facebook followers or my LinkedIn followers or my X followers or whoever, I'll put out a free code and let them download the book for free. And then I get to interact with them because I have their email address. I get to interact with them and find out what they like about the book, what they didn't like, what they'd like to see me write more. And it's really outstanding. So listen, if you want to get involved with Zoundy, I have a special code. Just go to zoundy.com/J. That's ZOUNDY .com/JAY. Use my code J25, JAY25, and you'll get special savings on joining Zoundy for authors and publishers. It's absolutely outstanding. I swear by it. It's amazing. I'm so glad I'm a part of it because it's changed the way I do audiobooks. Fantastic. Also, Lindcraft Team Realtors, let me just say this: best website on the planet when it comes to real estate. I know I'm biased. I get it, but I'm willing to admit it. But here's the thing. They have so much information. They got the houses and the stuff that you can see. They got all that stuff. But you know what they do have? Here's just an example. They had a child psychologist write an article on how to move with kids. A veteran, how to move with your animals. Right. And they have tons and tons of content. They got a great show hosted by this guy, Jay Izso, called Real Estate Right Now. It's fantastic. Great show. Airs live 8:30 every Thursday morning. It's Eastern time. But they do. They have great content, and the content's amazing. So check them out. They can help you. Been around for 40 years. They were at the top of the game when websites were new. They were there. So check them out. LindaCraft.com, LindaCraft.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with my friend Chris Fontanella, Overhaul Your Career. It's been too long. It's the 7 steps for restoring your classic model for new roads. We need to do that. You and I need to do this more often.
Yeah, I'd love to. I love being on your show.
This is fun. I don't know about you, but I have fun with you. Every time we've done a show together, it's been fun.
It's been great. I really enjoy talking with you. It's great. It's natural.
Yeah, it really is. We've got a lot in common, so we're having a lot of fun here. He'll end up being a client of mine before the end of the show.
I probably will.
Chapter 4, changing lanes, redefining your career. You say something out of the break. Choosing reinvention over a reprise doesn't necessarily imply dissatisfaction with your career or the person you become. Rather, it may reflect a readiness for a profound transformation fueled by a desire to go far beyond the familiar boundaries of a reprise.
Yeah.
Sometimes the urge to head into a completely new direction. Thank you for using a new direction in your quote, by the way. I appreciate that as the owner of the show. And you really give us some lessons from Colonel Sanders, Troy Hill, and Paul Verano in here, and about embracing a complete change.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, about really making a hard change.
Yeah, and as I said, I mean, that's where I'm at, and it's not easy figuring it out, and so there's some things to think about in relation to all that. And again, like, I'm not dissatisfied with what I've been doing for the last 33 years. I've been so fortunate. I've met fantastic people, super intelligent people, CFOs, controllers, directors of audit, high-level IT professionals at big companies like Walt Disney and Warner Brothers and Fox and all the way down the line. And it's been fantastic. And I've enjoyed every minute of it. Well, most every minute of it. Because, I've told people over the years, the best thing about my job is it's all about the people. And the worst thing about my job is it's all about the people.
Right.
People can be challenging sometimes. So, and that's every business you're in. But I'm ready for a change, and I got to figure that out. But there are things that come with that. And I use Colonel Sanders, I use Paul Verano and Troy Hill as examples of people who've sort of gone through that. I don't know if you want to talk about the different sort of things that I tried to pull out from their stories.
Yeah, I do. I want to talk about the lessons. So You've got 6 lessons that you pulled out. First one is embrace change willingly.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have an openness. I'm open, but again, I still haven't figured it out. But if you don't start with an openness to change, and that basically for me, and I would assume others, that means I've got to let something go so that I could grab onto something else.
Well, change is hard.
Yeah.
We don't like it.
No. I don't like it.
No human does. None of us like it. We like being comfortable.
Right.
We don't like being uncomfortable, because being uncomfortable means that it's discomfort, and we're not good at practicing intentional discomfort.
Yeah. Nobody likes to live on the razor's edge of the comfort zone.
No. And so when you practice being uncomfortable, that's change, but it's so necessary.
Yeah.
For us,
you got to throw yourself into some things, right? I mean, you could probably do. My wife would probably say, "Hey, how about trying a new restaurant this time?" I have maybe I should throw myself and not go to Houston so much, but I love it immensely and I'm comfortable there. It feels like home to me. But so maybe there are little ways and little things you could do to start making yourself feel uncomfortable. Yeah,
we got to practice. We got to practice intentional discomfort. I mean, it's important. Admit when your current role no longer fulfills you.
Yeah, I mean, I think in your heart of hearts, you just know, like, you start to taste that dissatisfaction with where you're at or what you're doing and where you're spending your time. Like maybe you start to feel like, you're waking up in the morning and you're going someplace you don't have the heart to go anymore. You don't want to make that investment of time. And so it's, being willing to admit to yourself that that role is no longer fulfilling you on one level or another.
Remember the importance of patience. Ouch.
Yeah. It takes time. I mean, segueing, transitioning, even on a minor way, given your 2-week notice. I mean, you got to be patient to get to the next thing. You got to be patient to find the next thing. It seldom happens overnight, right? I mean, I think we know that, but it's hard for us to accept that. And, it's just the reality you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to be patient.
So I love this fourth one because I have really worked with several clients on this, is you call the shots. And I just want to say before you go into it, is that, when we're at this stage of our career, find that thing that you've always wanted to do, that thing, that theme that has run through your life that said, I've never done it. I now can try to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then go for it. Right. I mean, again, the sort of the theme of all of my books using the car metaphor is that you have your hands on the steering wheel of your career vehicle and you drive it where you want to go. And it's just as true at the beginning of your career as it is toward the latter stage of your career. So again, it's you taking personal responsibility and accountability for your own career. You call the shots, you take it where you want to go. You have to have the reasons behind why you're doing what you're doing, or you'll easily be dissuaded from staying the course. And so just make sure you understand what the shot is you want to take and the reasons you have behind it, and then just go for it.
Honor your passion.
And it sort of gets back to being true to yourself, knowing yourself, remembering who you are at your core. What are those things that make you tick? And finding an avenue that gives an outlet for all of that stuff, so you can, let your individuality shine.
I think also here too, Chris, this is what I pulled out from you, is that you may have forgotten what your passion is. You've worked so long that you forgot what you're even passionate about.
Yeah.
And there's something deep down inside you that really you had a passion your whole life. You never got to really do it. And you really need to explore that again.
Yeah. It's kind of like you quoted from the Harry Potter thing, like in the maze, you can lose yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're going along and you're doing what you're doing. And sometimes you find that you're now you're on autopilot.
Yeah.
And you've lost the reasons why you're doing what you do. Like I love the staffing business because it afforded me an opportunity to help people in their careers and finding a job. And it's very rewarding when somebody calls you back and says, "Oh my God, this is my dream job. I'm so happy." Mm-hmm. Or like I had a guy once tell me, "You putting me in that permanent job allowed me to, I got the salary I needed so I could start my family." And then he's showing me a picture of his 2 kids, like that kind of stuff. Like, but sometimes you start going along and, you're on that treadmill of work. And then all of a sudden you're not even really thinking why you're doing what you're doing anymore. And you lose that sense of purpose, and you have to recapture that, I think, is the point you're trying to make.
Yeah. And then finally, adopt unconventionality.
Yeah, I'm big. I mean, I love the whole concept of being unorthodox, going against the grain, being counterintuitive. I just think that, at least for me in my life, that's worked. And listening to my inner voice and being intuitive and hearing the thing, even though like maybe the crowd is heading in one direction, sort of being that voice crying in the wilderness and, going somewhere else and being different than the masses. And again, carving out that thing that's uniquely mine, I think is really important. And that requires, I think, a certain amount of unconventionality. You're just going to have to be okay with feeling like a misfit.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, one of my favorite Christmas movies too, by the way.
Yeah.
The Island of Misfit Toys. Your individuality makes you unconventional.
Yes.
And
there's only one you.
yeah, and so you're already unconventional. You might as well lean into it. Friend, we've already done an hour of the show.
Just like that.
Just like that. Four chapters. We didn't even get through the fourth one. We just got started in the fourth one, but just like that, it's we've done an hour. Thank you as always. Tell people how they can get a hold of you.
Yeah, I've got a website, www.chrisfontanella.com. It's got, information on my books. It's got media information and articles I've written. There's a place where you can, ping me via email. So yeah, you can go on Amazon.com and look up any of my books. Just plug in my name, Chris Fontanella, and my books will come up. I'd be happy to interact with your listeners for sure. So they could reach out, go to my website and email me, and we'll start a dialogue. Awesome.
I love that. Stay with me, Chris. Folks, this is a show, I say to you every week, you know what? You're in control of three things: your attitude, your effort, and your resiliency. Fact of the matter is, life does not give us what we always want. In fact, sometimes our circumstances push us in areas, but we always have control of these three things. Your attitude. Yeah, it's not always easy, but you can control and have a positive attitude because you choose it, regardless of the circumstances. So choose a positive attitude. And that can come out of gratitude, finding the gratitude in everything. The second is your effort, and your effort's tied to excellence. We don't always have the same amount of gas in the tank, but what are you doing with the gas that you do have in the tank? The fact of the matter is you can be as excellent as you want to be every day. And then finally, resiliency. We all get punched in the gut. We all get punched in the teeth and get knocked down. But it's up to you to get back up, and we need you to get back up. Why? Because you're worth it, and we want you on the team. You know what? I'm going to be back next week, but you had a lot of choices, and you chose us. Thank you so much for doing that. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube, wherever you listen to the show. Write us a 5-star positive review. We really appreciate that very much. As I say to you all over the world, you know what that is. Ciao, everybody.